Hello, and welcome to Astronomy 020, the Astronomy Lab. I'm sure I have some of the same students in this class that I have in my astronomy lecture, 010. And if I don't, I'd be very surprised. But regardless, welcome to this class. This is the one-unit laboratory that is basically made to accompany astronomy. So if you need a physical lab requirement, this would be the lab to take along with astronomy, or if you're just interested in getting some more hands-on experience with astronomy, then this is the lab to take. Okay, so what is this class all about? Well, it's a one-unit class. It's just about the lab, so that means there's no textbook. And I would like to refer to the syllabus over here. Right, so you can see in the syllabus that we have no textbook. However, there are office hours if you want to come and ask questions about the lab. Those are the same times as my office hours that I hold for the one lecture I'm teaching, which is that Astronomy 010. Okay, and that's the last time you have to hear about Astronomy 010, I promise. All right, but my office hours are Monday 10 to 11 starting the second week of instruction. You can reach me via email right here at this email address, but it's much better to contact me through Canvas Messenger. All right, so just send me a message through Canvas because I'm on Canvas updating the modules and so on. That's the best place to reach me. Okay. By the way, I haven't introduced myself, again, assuming that you might have seen me from another class, but I'm Dr. Trevor H. Gonzalez-Nayetz. You can call me Dr. G or Dr. Gonzalez-Nayetz. You can also call me Professor G or Professor Gonzalez-Nayetz. Okay, so let's take a look at the intended outcomes of this course. The course student learning outcomes. The first one is we want to determine the ability or demonstrate the ability to set up and use a telescope to locate objects in the sky. Well, since we're doing this as an online lab, we're not actually going to be working with telescopes, but we are going to be working with virtual telescopes. So these virtual night sky applications. So we'll certainly get some experience with those. We're going to demonstrate the ability to utilize a star chart and astronomy software, so that's software we're going to be using quite a bit, to locate objects and guide simple astronomical observations, like when planets are closest to each other, for example. And we're going to demonstrate familiarity with the optical components of most telescopes. And that involves the idea of how telescopes work, including telescopes that actually look at visible light, as well as telescopes that look at radio waves and so on. Okay, so the class is based around Canvas, and you can see below me I have Canvas open, and it's all based on the modules. It's one module per lab, okay? So you can see that in this first module, there's Welcome and Lab 1. The next module, which will unlock in a few days, there's Lab 2, and I'll talk about a bit about the dates in just a second, but we see Lab 2 is constellations. Now, most of them are just like that. They're just going to be the module itself is a lab, and then you have the name of the lab and the number of the lab, and that's it. All right, so there's really not much per module, but it still made sense to break it up like that so I could unlock them as we go through the material, okay? Really, the only one besides week 1 that has any extra information is going to be the very last module, which has the lab practical. And we'll talk a bit about what the lab practical is in just a minute, okay? So again, that's the structure of the class. It's very straightforward. One lab per week, which is expressed as a module on Canvas, which is the place you should be checking. That's where you're going to see your to-do list. That's where you're going to see your assignments. That's where you're going to see your grade. It's a one-stop shop for this class. And it truly is. There's really nothing outside of Canvas that you need for this class. Now there's links within the labs that will take you to videos and applications and so on, but it's still all based in Canvas, okay? Now the syllabus document is linked right here, and I have it open, right? It's a PDF, and that's of course what I'm referring to, okay? Now, the bulk of the class, 80% to be precise, are the labs. There'll be lab activities every week, as you can see over here in the first bullet point. Each lab will involve a handout that is due by the next week. So I'm gonna have labs due on Fridays, okay? So you can see that the first lab is due this Friday. All right, and that's Lab 1, Scale of the Solar System. So you have all week to get this lab done. Now I could have maybe pushed that back to next Friday, but I'd rather hit the ground running and just get this lab done so we already have done some work for this class, okay? And I think that you can definitely find time between now and Friday to do Lab 1, okay? And we'll talk a bit about how you prepare for a lab and actually get it done in just a minute. Lab activities will be a mix of working with web-based simulations and performing experiments at home, okay? So I have come up with a few experiments that you can use everyday objects for and actually do at home, okay? You will not need your own telescope or binoculars. Certainly not. Everything is going to be either based on a computer or based with some few activities you can do at home. All the labs can be completed individually or as partners. Okay, so I do accept you turning in labs as partners. When you do that, you want to clearly state at the top of the submitted work, who you work with, and you can both submit the same thing, for example, or you can submit slightly different things and just have work together, okay? But you have to make it clear if you did work with somebody, no working in groups of 3. You can either work individually or as partners. All right, so the points for labs will come from completing the handouts, because again, every lab has a handout, which will be graded for completeness, correctness, and clarity, okay? And I basically choose certain parts of the lab, so maybe if there's 20 questions in the lab or 20 parts on the handout where you can fill in information or answer a question, then maybe I'll choose 3 or 4 of those to grade really carefully, make sure you understood certain concepts or answer things correctly or even made the correct calculation. And then that's kind of the correct part. The completeness is I make sure you've done all the lab and not skipped any parts of it. And then clarity comes down to sometimes handwriting. If it's really bad, I will take off points for that, but also like complete sentences and so on, okay? And that's what I'm looking for as I grade for full credit. And I'll be marking up the labs as I grade them so you can see where you lost points potentially, okay? Or maybe you didn't lose any points because you just did a great job. All right, so all the submitted lab handouts will be graded out of a 20 points total, and the total from all the labs will constitute 80% of your overall grade. So definitely most of your overall grade of this 1 unit class. Okay. Now exams, there is one exam. Okay, we call it a lab practical, which is a typical term for an exam in a lab class like this. Culmination, excuse me, I almost said cumulative, but it doesn't make sense in this case. The culmination of the lab will be a lab practical that will be completed individually, so no partners on this one. This is an exam, so it has to be done individually, and during the scheduled time. You'll have 1 day to complete it. The final practical will consist of follow-up questions to test your understanding of labs throughout the semester. I won't test your understanding of every lab, but you don't know which ones I'll choose. There'll be probably about 4 labs represented on the lab practical with some questions, maybe asking you to repeat a simulation or referring to some concept that was expressed in that lab. And we can talk more about it as we get closer to the date. I'll post an announcement, okay? Because one thing, by the way, in addition to having the modules on the Canvas page, there's the other thing we will see right up on top will be announcements. That's where I'll be posting information like the fact that this welcome video is up and so on, and if reminding you about the upcoming due dates, if there's any changes to the due dates, and certainly reminding you about the lab practical when we get closer to it. So you'll see that all under announcements, okay? And the final practical is going to be out of 100 points, okay? And again, probably like 4 25 point questions, which each probably have multiple parts. And that it will contain around 10 questions, okay? Like broken up into parts. And it is scheduled for Thursday, December 16th, and you'll have 2 hours to complete it. So once you start it, it's going to be based in Canvas, and it's going to be timed. So once you start it, then you have to complete it within 2 hours. But you can start it anytime during that day, from midnight to midnight of Thursday, December 16th, okay? So letter grades are just like you expect, 90% and above is an A, and so on, okay? Now, again, to summarize, lab work is 80% of the class. That's basically what the class is. But then we do have that final lab practical, which is 20% of your grade. So practically speaking, that means that you can turn on all the labs and guarantee yourself a B and skip the lab practical. No one ever does that. But the point being is you can definitely miss a few questions on the lab practical. In fact, if you come in really strong and did a lot of good lab work, but you're worried about the actual test format, then you really only need to get half the lab practical correct if you came in having done all of your labs complete and completely correct. Okay? And I do drop one lowest lab. So you can either just skip a lab or not do so hot on one lab, and that will not affect your overall grade. This calendar over here in the syllabus just shows you the actual dates. This just shows you week by week, not the due dates, because the labs will always be due on Fridays. So for example, lab 1 is going to be due on Friday of the week that is represented by that lab. Same thing for lab 2, right? Lab 2 covers the week 2, so the 23rd to the 29th. That means that the labs should be due on Friday the 27th, okay? And so on, all right? And that certainly is reflected over here on Canvas, although, and I want to just give you a heads up here, I haven't done a full kind of audit or check between the dates on the syllabus and the dates on Canvas. What that means is the dates on the syllabus document are the correct dates. These are the correct labs and the correct weeks. I have to make sure that those match up with these labs because I've imported some previous labs that I've used in other semesters because I wanted to get all the information in there in terms of the videos and the links and everything, but I have to go through and double check all the dates. I'll be kind of doing that throughout the semester, or maybe I'll just do it all up front. But the point being is that if you want to know when things are due, just look at the actual syllabus document. You can see what labs are due on what days, okay? And again, if any changes are made, I will post an announcement to let you know about any date changes. But let's take a look at Lab 1 so you have an idea what they look like. So you go over here, look at Module 1, the only unlocked module, and if you click on Lab 1, you will see that there is a direction video. So every lab has a directions video that I filmed explaining how to do the lab, either how to work with the hands-on equipment, or how to make some of the calculations, or often how to use the simulation. And a real quick aside on making calculations, not all labs actually require calculations. It's about half and half. Some are entirely qualitative labs where you're just answering conceptual questions about astronomy. Other ones you do have to actually make math-based calculations. But here in this video, I explain how to do lab 1. And then I actually have the linked document, the handout, that you would either write on by printing it, or you could digitally mark it up as well. But this is what you'll be turning in. And all the handouts always have space for the answers within the handout. Now, I would accept and will accept if you write them on a separate piece of paper, but I greatly prefer that if you write on the handout itself, either by printing and actually writing and then scanning, or writing on it digitally, or mocking it up digitally. Okay? But that's what basically labs will look like. That's the assignment. So that since it's an assignment, there's a place to actually submit your work and upload your work. You will want to upload it as a PDF, no matter if you did it digitally or scanned in handwritten work. Always going to be a PDF format, and that's just always going to be due every week. But the point being is that the assignment itself that you would see in your to-do list is your one-stop shop in terms of the actual handout, as well as a directions video. And that's the case for all the labs. I try to keep that pretty simple so you always know where to look for the information. Okay? So hopefully that's clear. The syllabus has the absolute up-to-date list of all the labs on their corresponding weeks. The Canvas certainly will as they unlock, and that's our lab class with a lab practical a few months away from now. I hope it sounds interesting. I think these labs are a great complement to an astronomy lecture, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. So I look forward to hearing from you throughout the semester and seeing all the work that you submit. Bye for now.